Well, as Matrics gear up for their exams, the general prayer is that they proceed uninterrupted by load shedding. Over 920,000 pupils are writing this year's Matric finals, and that's an increase of about 25,000. Well, the stage is set at almost 7,000 exam centres across the country. But what stage of power cuts will they face? Let's discuss the impact of blackouts on our bright sparks with education specialist Professor Mary Metcalfe joining me this morning for this conversation. Prof, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. Matriculants, ordinarily nerves right now, writing their finals, trying to proceed with good colours, of course, to, the institutions of higher learning. But we can't have this conversation without talking about the challenges they have faced in as far as blackouts and load shedding is concerned. So how are they faring during this time with the different power cuts and stages?
Well, we would be able to understand that across the country they are experiencing it differently. First of all, this was a class that went through COVID 2020 when they were in grade 10, and they've lost a lot of time. So the capacity of schools, the capacity of families to support children under conditions, first of all, of COVID and now under load shedding, will vary greatly. So some families will be well set up. They will have backup systems. They'll have solar-powered lights or lights that are charged during the day. And other families live in conditions where it's less predictable, where they may not be able to make provision for learners to have access to lighting when there's load shedding. And the same applies to schools. Some schools, learners are writing in very dark halls.
Yeah. With that being said, will this have a direct impact on the results that we anticipate next year?
Results are always going to be a combination of many factors. What we've seen during 2020 and 21 COVID years was that schools put in enormous effort to support their learners. There was commitment and dedication. Learners put in a huge amount of effort. And in fact, the results did not drop over those 2 years so significantly. This year, when we look at the results, we'll have to look at the national context. We'll have to look at the inequalities. We'll have to look at the time that was lost to these learners over the last 2 years. And with some subjects in particular, we're going to have to look at the conditions under which the learners wrote, as well as understanding the broad social context of learning and teaching.
Right. Prof, just with regards to the impact of power cuts, what are schools doing right now to assist learners, or what could they better do to give them support?
It's one of the questions that always fascinates me whenever a broader social problem is now evident in education. There are so many social problems that are not necessarily being solved in society, although efforts are being made. And when we realize the impact of that on schools, on hospitals, on old age homes, then we say, what are those education or health departments doing? In fact, every social problem that we're experiencing has an impact on every element of society, on the most vulnerable, and on schools. And it's not the education system alone that can address those social challenges. It's why we have to get everything that should be in place to support the social functioning, the economic functioning of the country working well.
Yeah. At this time, especially with not just the impact of load shedding, but with all the social challenges that the country is experiencing, what would your advice be to matriculants at this time to cope, to be able to manage their anxiety while they go through this phase of writing their very final exams?
I think families, first of all, need to realize, as schools do, that learners are going to be anxious, they are going to be tense. So one needs to be able to give them the coping strategies to realize that this is a culmination of many years of work. This is an opportunity to be able to consolidate the work that they've put in over all the way basically from almost foundation phase, but particularly these 3 intensive years. They need to know that that preparation is going to stand them in good stead, and that the last minute dependence on cramming, which may then be compromised by load shedding, is not the solution. They've got to remain confident in what they've been taught, and be able to just keep rehearsing what they remember, even if it's mentally and they're not able to look at a text.
And just my last question to you, Prof, and as far as, the SGBs are concerned, the teachers and the overall Department of Basic Education, what role can they also play?
Well, I think school governing bodies need to carry on working closely with schools to identify immediate and urgent issues such as this, as well as the broader social problems in the community with which the school governing body can interact with the community in support of schools. So your question is very good, because what it suggests is that there is no problem that can be solved in isolation. It's a question of the community and the school and the teachers and families working together. And where we have leadership in the school and in the community that supports a collaborative working together to address any of the challenges that learners are facing, then schools are more able to be effective.